Perfect. And we are recording. Okay, so just to reiterate, welcome to the storytelling webinar that Kellie will be taking you through today. But I just want to give you some background details first. And the first step is, as you enter the room, you can just mute yourself. You can certainly unmute when we come to question time. So a lot of you would have seen Kellie before when she's given us updates and information about different ways of growing our business in the past. But specifically, the reason why today's webinar workshop has come forward is because the last, sorry, I keep getting distracted by hearing the people come in, so excuse me losing my train of thought occasionally. But when we ran a very specific marketing meeting a few weeks back to get some ideas and to tap into your guys' expertise as to what are some important changes to make going forward when it comes to growing the business, especially online. Sorry guys, again, if anyone has not muted yourself, can you do so? Because I can hear lots of typing in the background, which will come up on the recording. So just look for your mute button. One of the things that came through very strongly was a desire to embrace the concept of storytelling. This was because we're looking at ways in which we can connect, start and deepen relationships with potential clients as well as clients beyond what we often do, which is simply talking about our services. Because there is such a broad market out there with people who are, or organizations that are in a similar stance as us, in a similar position as a DFK firm with similar services, just saying we're really good at this is obviously not the way to differentiate yourself from other competitors. One way in which is very, very effective is to illustrate and demonstrate the outcomes that we provide through telling stories of our clients in the journey with us. But there was another part to this as well, was how do we illustrate the values, what we stand for in our business? Because although we often think that we buy or invest and hire on logic, we actually quite often do that on emotion. When we're looking at a particular product or researching a service, if there is a connection there with the way that we feel, the way that we believe the world works, the way that we believe that services should be provided, that emotional connection can actually tip the scales in our favor. And in a competitive market these days, anything we can do that helps tip it in our favor is obviously a good thing. Especially in a very noisy online world where we want to add to the conversation, not the noise. So the concept of storytelling, and the reason why I brought Kellie in to talk to you about this specifically, is because you need to learn the art of how to find the stories. Because we could sit here and go, well, I'm not sure what we could talk about. Well, there is an actual framework to help you identify those stories, and then how to, the different types that there are, how to draw them out of our clients and put them into words that you can use both on your website, because this goes beyond case studies. Case studies can be quite dry. We want to utilize those, but bring a little bit more emotion into them, a little bit more value-driven commentary into them. And from there, you can also use them on social media as well. All of the firms have indicated an interest in becoming more active on social media, but what do we say? So the storytelling comes in there as well. Now, I will let you know that we at DFK as a whole, one of the things that came across again in that next gen marketing meeting was the role that you want, the individual firms want, the DFK.com site to play in the overall marketing. And a big piece of that was tell stories. Illustrate on the DFKANZ.com website what it is that we do and link that back to the individual firms. So we are going down that path with Kellie. We're going to be bringing her in to actually write at least one story from each one of the firms that we can utilize on the main website. And then hopefully from there, you'll get a taste of how this experience works. And then Kellie can talk to you about how that might play out within your own firms as well, because you've all got many, many stories. We just have to work out how to extract, compile and share them. So really what we're talking about today is what is possible for you and your business once you start using business storytelling as an art of communication, the stories that you need to tell and where you can actually tell them and how, and the three types of stories that are the ones most often utilized or should be most often utilized when you are moving into the art of storytelling. So lovely Kellie has spent years, 16 plus years as a journalist where it was all about storytelling, and then in the PR field as well. But she's now merged her talents into an area to help clients attract and then bring people through a funnel, as it's called in the online world, to bring them closer to inquiries Our job is to help you position and get inquiries. Your job is then to obviously convert that inquiry into a new relationship. So we're going to have time, very much so, within this training for you guys to ask specific questions. I'll let Kellie decide whether that be during or if you want to ask those at the end. And I may pop backwards and forwards with some comments if I see something that I can make more clear as Kellie is presenting, because I know you guys pretty well. But thank you, Kellie, for investing your time with us, and thank you everyone that's here for investing your time in this new skill development. Over to Kellie.
Hi, very good. Thank you so much. And what I'm going to do is share my screen first of all. And yes, you're more than welcome to ask questions as we go through if there's something particularly that you have tried or want to try within your business, but not sure how to do it. So I'm just going to change the view. Now, please let me know if you can't see the slides or they've been cut off or whatever Zoom might be doing with them. Does that look all okay? Excellent, fantastic. So as Ange was just explaining, one of the big challenges with business is the ability to differentiate ourselves from our competitors. And it's not only just in that phase where we're trying to attract the attention of the right people in the online space or wherever that happens to be, because of all that noisiness that happens now in anyone's given day. The amount of messages that they receive is obviously increased. But it's also once they move into the buying phase, why are they going to choose you? They're going to be comparing you to competitors. So what is it that makes you stand out? Why are they going to choose you, and what makes you different to any other accounting firm out there? We want them to say, yes, you're the accounting firm for me, because they align with who you are and what your values are. Now, differentiating yourself might seem difficult. You all do audits, you all do compliance, you all do tax returns. What you do is not so different, but how you do it is. And that's the thing that we really need to dive into. So we need to get clear on the messages and then wrap those messages within storytelling so that we can attract more of the leads that we want, because obviously people, as Ange said, connect with story because of that emotional side. So as she's already outlined today, we'll be looking at why storytelling, what's truly possible for you and your business with storytelling, what stories need to be told where. So I'm going to give you some different examples. You may not at this stage in your business need to share them in all of the areas that I share, but pick and choose which ones are most relevant to you, and I'll explain a little bit more on that when we get to it. And then the last part of today is going to be really a part where you can take some information away and implement it within your business. But it's finding the right stories, and I'm going to share with you 3 stories that always have a really significant impact on your business when you share them. So my goal today is just to inspire some stories within you that you can share on social media. If you're running a blog, then it's perfect for blogs. It may also be on your website as well. So there's different places through your marketing funnel or your marketing pipeline that you can be having these, or even in everyday conversations that you have with people if you're doing in-person networking, that you can be sharing these stories. So why is storytelling so important? I guess a visual view is that storytelling are a bit like the bubbles in your Coca-Cola or the yeast in your pizza. They breathe life into your, there you go, breathe life into your marketing. And just like that very corny line that I've just fed you, they actually paint visuals in our heads that allow us to understand concepts and connect with people. Now, I've always had, as Ange explained, a bit of a storytelling thread through my life, having been a journalist for 16 years and doing the PR agency. I also wrote the book that took 3 years of one of Tasmania's largest construction companies as well, and I told their story from a very personal and emotional point of view. It wasn't just a chronological history of their company. It actually dived into how their complete business changed. How their business changed completely the direction, because when it come to succession, they expected to hand their business over to their son. But at age 21, he developed schizophrenia. And so the story was really around their most defining moment in their life and business and how that shifted. So it became a business book about an emotional story, and I think that highlights why we need to get into the storytelling. But I think the true power of storytelling for my business in particular really emerged in recent years. There's been multiple moments that I guess have highlighted the importance of it for me. One of those was that this time last year, or in May last year, I was sitting in a hospital emergency department and with my husband, who had extreme high blood pressure, and in a room of 70-year-old men and women who, in his words, looked like death warmed up. It was my 42-year-old husband who was the one that they expected wasn't going to last the rest of the day because they couldn't bring his high blood pressure down. And for me, the looks on the nurses' faces pretty much said it all about how dire this situation was. So for me, I went from this moment of thinking about what blog post do I need to write next, and what story am I going to tell in my next newsletter, and it completely shifted to, is my husband going to survive the rest of the day? Now I look back now, and I guess for me, I realised how important it was, or how fortunate I was to have systemised my business, that it kept ticking along without me, and it kept the conversation going with people because of all the storytelling that I've embedded throughout my entire marketing system. So people still carried on a conversation with me without me needing to be there. It also meant that I had sales from my business. I had someone book in a session with me to talk about whether they wanted to work with me, and I wasn't even in my business. So for me, it's become a form of insurance, which probably is a word that lights you up. It doesn't light me up, but for me, it's become a bit of a business insurance for when life happens. My business isn't going to fall over because the conversations with the right people are still happening. So what about you? It might be that a staff member leaves and you have this gaping hole in your marketing side, or maybe marketing is your responsibility and life happens to you and it comes to a halt. And sometimes that can be as simple as going on a holiday. So this has become a bit of a mission for me, and it's one of my big purposes in business, is to really help people create this within their own business. So I want to dive in right now. Angie, you've got your hand up, no?
Yeah. I was just actually going to add in one of the things that we're all very, very comfortable with is gaining new clients or new conversations through referrals or through our own networks or networking. One of the things that you can consider storytelling to be is that the sort of conversations that you have when you're actually meeting someone face to face or in those scenarios, those sort of stories can be on your website, and so can invite contact in almost a very similar way, only you don't have to be there, as Kellie's saying. So that's what we're looking for. We're looking to generate more leads from your website and social media.
Perfect. Very good. So obviously we're all hardwired to listen to stories. It's just the natural way that our brains learn and process information. And one of the quotes that I really love that I think sums this up is that people don't remember what you say as much as they remember what they see when you say it. And I guess the reality is that stories paint these very vivid mental pictures in someone's mind, and so vivid, in fact, that often people feel like they've experienced what you're describing in that moment, even though it's, they're not there, so they can be put into that situation. And the reality is that the brain can't tell the difference between reading a story of something and actually experiencing themselves. So what does that mean for us as business owners or for storytellers? What it means is that you have the ability to allow someone to experience your service before they invest, and it means they feel the experience. Or you can allow them to experience what it would be like to have that problem that they're being challenged with right now actually solved. So they can see it, they can feel what life's going to be like, and a bit like around the campfire, we lean in and listen to stories. Whereas when we start to, when we've got the TV on, we start to channel surf as soon as the ads come on. So that's what storytelling does. It captures our attention, makes us lean in and makes us listen. So if you've heard a few minutes ago, obviously I didn't tell you a bland list of what I've done, that I've been a journalist and all that sort of stuff. I left that to Ange to do the boring bio part. I instead told you a story, and I told you an emotional story that connects with where I'm at, and that I guess the emotional, financial and physical impact that storytelling has had on my business, and you know, that allows you to understand the value of this without me having to push a whole bunch of facts at you. I can just tell you a simple emotional story so you understand why this is so powerful. You may not have resonated with the fact, you know, you may not have nearly lost a husband or wife. You may not identify with that as a story, but you'll see it in your own way. You'll see it in your own, from your own point of view, and you'll paint that scenario into your own head as you listen to the story. So here are some other reasons very quickly why storytelling can be so critical to your business. One is forming relationships to build the know, like, and trust factor. Often, I guess, we don't realise how that story that you create is actually a bridge for your potential leads to get to know you, to connect with you, and position you as an authority as well, which is really important. There's also a huge level of trust that needs to happen for accountants before someone's going to commit with you, because they're talking about something very personal for them, which is their finances. It's humanising your brand, so it allows your ideal client to identify with you, and especially, you know, if you're a dairy farmer, just as an example, you may not they may not feel that they have much in common with you as the accountant, because they feel that you come from very different worlds. You need to show how we're just like you, we're no different. As I mentioned already, processing and retaining important information. So it actually makes, as I'll share soon, it actually makes the information you share 80% more memorable by putting it into a story. So, you know, wouldn't it be great if more of your potential clients always fully understood what it was that you actually do? And this is great if you feel it is difficult to explain sometimes what it is you do or how you can help people. You know, why should I get an accountant on board? Why can't I just do this myself and save a heap of money? You need to paint a picture that they can easily process, see the value in what you're trying to say, and then have it stay with them long after you've actually told that story. It's that thing where you go away and the story rolls around and around in your head and you think, why am I still thinking about this? Maybe it is important to me. And the last one is that it opens up a two-way conversation with not just potential clients, but also your existing clients as well. So people are more likely to open up to you when you're not pushing your message at them, as I was explaining with the TV ads versus sitting around the campfire. Now, you may not feel right now that you have big stories to share, but I spent 16 years as a journalist, and one of the things that I realised and identified was that sometimes the most ordinary people can have the most extraordinary stories hiding inside them. So we may not be changing the world, so to speak, but we are selling a service that has a benefit to the lives of our clients. And people want to be moved and inspired, and they want to believe in something. So you need to make them believe in you through the stories that you're telling. Now, there's a bit of a myth out there that you have to provide this one secret, or the 10 steps, or that you need to teach all the time. But when there's hundreds and millions of websites competing for attention, and there's hundreds of thousands of people who do exactly what you do, then you have to stand out. So as an accountant, you're writing blog posts about filing tax returns. But how many other accountants are writing the exact same blog post that you're writing? Even if you have the most amazing information in the world, people just don't have time for information anymore. They haven't made that emotional connection with them that's relevant to their life right now. And I'm going to show you some examples of how to do this a little bit differently, so that when you share content like that, what you share actually matters to your clients and to your potential clients as well. Likewise, accountants can regularly be heard saying lines like, profit was up 10% from last year. But the key is to tell me why. That's the insight that people are after. Try not to get bogged down in numbers and tell a story around those numbers. And I guess the reality is that not everyone thinks in numbers like accountants do. Some think conceptually and others think in words or pictures. If you can tell your story in the broadest way possible, you're going to engage the audience much more. Hence why I've included some stories and some numbers here today, because I'm very conscious of who my audience is. So I know that you do love numbers, so I have got a few. And of course, you can do this through your entire marketing funnel, or I call it a client pathway map. I thought I'd change the name of that, but a marketing pipeline or a marketing funnel. So being lured by the storytelling from a simple LinkedIn post that you might have put in that awareness stage, through to the conversation that you have with someone on the phone or in your office in that first commitment phase. But have them not even be conscious of actually what's happening as they go through this entire thing that happens so seamlessly, because they get completely enveloped in the story. Now, your pipeline may not look anything like this. It might simply be meeting someone in person at a networking event, following up with an email to schedule a coffee with them, and then they agree that you want to work with them, so you send them a contract. That may be your pipeline.
Kelly, just jumping in for a moment to reassure everybody, a copy of the slides will be circulated afterwards, so you don't have to try and draw out this map that you've got right in front of you.
Yes. Very good, I should have said that. But everything that you're doing in business to be able to create a client or create a lead is a pipeline. So even if it doesn't look like this, still view it as a pipeline, and you can tell storytelling throughout the entire, or tell a story to reinforce why you're the best option for them through the entire pipelines series. So that's why storytelling is so important. So hopefully I've sold you on that concept, so that we can move on to where you should actually share these stories now. Firstly, I want to add that storytelling isn't a magic pill. It's just a piece of the puzzle. You do have to, of course, know where they are in the buying cycle, know who it is that you're trying to sell to, and of course where you can be sharing the stories for the greatest impact as well. But the quickest way to identify the latter is to know who your ideal client is. Now, I know Angie's already done work with you on this, sorry, go back one, on figuring out who it is that you most want to be working with. But the reality is it's important to know who you most want to work with, and it's that step that's going to make everything else for you so much easier. And in fact, I, for example, shared a tweet that linked to a blog post, and someone tweeted back and said, "It's like you're inside my head. How did you know that's what I was thinking?" Because the content so resonated with them, and that's where you know that you've nailed your ideal client, and when they can respond like that. Another example is one of my clients is an optometrist. I'm just going to move those photos up the top there. One of my optometrist clients from Bankstown and Kiama in New South Wales posted stories like this on her Facebook page about why she does Cambodia Vision, and had what she described as perfect fit clients walking in the door, as if by magic was her description once we started sharing some of these stories on Facebook. They were aligned to her business values, while she was sharing openly through these stories. And the fact is that this is just one in a series of stories that she shared about leading up to the event, during the event, and then post coming back from Cambodia Vision.
Okay, I'm going to jump in again for 1 sec there, because it's something that Kelly just said about this person knows their values and communicated their values, which then has that resonance with a potential client. And I was mentioning briefly the book, Find Your Why. You may have heard of Simon Sinek, who is a very famous TED talker who had Start With Why. This is the next book that's just come out. It's a practical guide for discovering purpose for you and your team. And as Kelly is saying, if you're really clear on your values, not just the top line, if you think of an iceberg, the things above the waterline that you can quickly say that, oh, well, our values are, good service and professionalism and, confidentiality and the basic things that you expect of a service provider. What we're looking for is for you to dig deeper under the surface and find the things that really have the potential to connect with a client, not what they expect, but what goes the extra mile. So that's a book that I would recommend and encourage you to have in the firm, and that you guys have conversations around this. There's some really, really good questions in here that are posed that allow you to dig deeper like that, and that will help you connect the stories so much better.
Perfect. I'll share an example too as we go through of a client I worked with using that exact book to figure out what her why and her values were, and I'll show you some examples of what that actually ended up looking like in her marketing as well. But it's stories like these that people actually remember as well, because we can give them all the information in the world, but it will go in one ear and out the other. And as I mentioned earlier, and just so I've got some numbers in my slides, storytelling makes your work 80% more memorable. So a lot of the time, if you tell the right story, you can allow people to, as I said, imagine themselves implementing that solution, or even better, experiencing the outcome of that solution as well. So what pictures are you painting? What messages are you trying to get across? And how does your ideal or potential clients actually perceive you right now based on what you're already sharing? So once we know who is your ideal client, we know where they're hanging out, as in where do we actually find these people to be able to have the conversation in the first place, then we need to know what the messages are and sharing those with them. Now, if our goal is to attract more leads, which is what this is all about today, for our accounting business, then one of the best exercises you can do in your business is to identify where in your marketing pipeline, that picture that I showed you before, that you're either currently struggling to convert people or you're attracting the wrong types of people right now. So I want to take a look at some examples so you can see where it is for you that you need to increase your level of storytelling. I'm going to take you through each section of it. It's not to say that you need to then figure out how to find stories for every single element. Figure out where in this pipeline you're currently struggling and that you know you need to enhance the stories. So if our goal is to, try and actually get enough people visiting our website or reaching our social media or reaching out to us via social media or via email, then we need to increase the volume of people who know who we are and improve the stories that we're telling back in that awareness stage at the beginning. So maybe you've identified that LinkedIn is where your ideal client is hanging out, or you know that they're Googling certain terms into Google, or maybe you're actually at in-person networking events. That's your awareness phase. Then that's where you need to be sharing these stories to build that know, like, and trust with people. So one of my former clients is the Synectic Group, and I'll share a few of their examples throughout this today, but they're a Tasmanian accounting and financial business, and they win a lot in the Employer of Choice Awards in Tasmania. So instead of just saying how they put their staff's welfare first, which would be great, but they instead show it through the stories like this one on Facebook, where on World Mental Health Day they shared how they're implementing a no lunch at the desk policy to show how they look after staff and put their welfare first. The other example there is actually from, I think it's a US firm, that's humanising their brand by putting the face of staff members on Instagram, which is not really a platform I would have identified for an accounting business, but it seems to be working for them. So they created a series of posts on the behind the scenes of busy season, including giving free meals to staff when they have to work back late. This funny post at the front there is about staff members still being able to see his shadow, meaning there's still 10 weeks to go of busy season. And there were some quite funny posts that they put together, one each week during tax season, to show what it's like and show the behind the scenes of what it's like for accountants during their busiest time of the year. And they told some really interesting stories, but used humour to create that engagement as well.
So jumping in just for a moment, as I will now and then, two thoughts that come up here. One of our concerns sometimes is, and this may or may not be true for your firm, is the concern about, we've talked about the need to humanise your brand, and that's really important for connection, but sometimes there's a concern about, but what about our professionalism? If we show sort of, behind the scenes, or, the food fight at lunch or whatever, just joking, that may somehow detract from the professionalism. But the answer really is not at all, because you still retain the professionalism, but you actually allow people to see that there are real people behind the veil, so to speak. So that's a piece of concern that may need to be discussed at the firm level, but opening the window and opening the door on behind the scenes is really useful. The second piece is that Kellie was talking about that picture on the left-hand side with we could have told you about what we're doing for World Mental Health Day, but instead we're showing you. So a question to ask yourself is, if this is our value, what does it look like in action? So how does it actually physically happen in your organization? So always thinking, if this is a value of ours, what does it look like in action? Then show that part, not the concept, but what it looks like when it's actually happening. And that's a very good way of bringing a story to life.
Perfect. No, that's great. Because it is important for us to know who's behind the brand, for us to be able to build that know, like, and trust factor. We have to remove ourselves from simply being a building on X street in X town. We need to actually say, who are the people behind that brand? And another example that I did take out was something to do with Women's Influence Day. And so the females and the staff each chose who's the woman that influenced them the most as well. So it's a way to be able to bring people who are in the business and put them in the forefront and show what's important to them as well. So as I said, it's good to build that know, like, and trust with us, so that when you reach out and you ask for my details to become a lead, I already feel like I know you. So don't be afraid to share a piece of you in amongst asking people to work with you. So going back to our pipeline again, the next step, if we're challenged by to ask someone to either get their email address or phone number, missed the step. If you're either not getting people coming to your website, or they're not sticking around when they do arrive. So you might be getting people on your website, but they're not spending a lot of time there. Or maybe you're not getting as much engagement as you want, then you need to find ways to connect. And you can do that through videos, articles, or if you're already doing a blog on your website as well, this is a great one to be doing. Now, this blog post is about attending XeroCon this year, and takes what would ordinarily be a pretty dry information post about finding your 1%, and brings their unique voice and story for their clients and their potential clients to connect with. And you suddenly feel like you're sitting down having a conversation with the director of the company, because you're reading it from even the first line. I want to share with you one of my personal highlights from attending XeroCon 2018. It's not a whole bunch of facts and figures to start with. They're putting me in the picture and putting me in the room and sharing what it is from this event that mattered to them, but also that matters to me. So how will your business make a difference? I'm interested in reading that post. So the next one, if we don't do the 2 steps above particularly well, and again, this is still if we're having face-to-face conversations at networking, it can be challenging to then ask someone for either their email address or their phone number to actually get the lead. Now, we can do lots of different things here. One, if you're in-person networking, well, you start with the stories first and build that know, like, and trust before you say, hey, here's my business card. But in an online sense, we need to actually capture their details on our website. We might ask them to book a call. We might ask them, as DFK does so well in doing webinars or trainings, also free PDF opt-ins or white papers or whatever it is that aligns with what you're doing. But we need to tell storytelling within those, but also on our landing pages as well, and the pages that they land on, we need to be telling stories. Now, I have to be honest here and say that finding an example of a landing page that told a good story in the accounting space was quite challenging. But I love this landing page done for a quiz. One, because it's a little bit different. It stands out for me. But also the really simple client story it tells in the sidebar there. So ultimately, we're trying to solve a problem. And if a client saying this helped them determine if their business is positioned to sell or not, that I'm more likely to want to do this quiz and find out what my score is for my business, which is obviously the outcome. So I do think they defaulted a bit too much to numbers in the main copy, but painting a 1-sentence picture, even in this, of a business owner's example would have helped me a little better to visualize how powerful this tool could be for my business. But think about the pages on your website where you're asking people for their details. Are you telling any story on that page? It may only be 1 sentence that actually allows them to see the value in why they should put in their details.
So that, guys, just as a really quick action point that you could take as soon as this webinar is finished, is go to your Contact Us page on your website and see if there's any heart there, or if it's just black and white, contact us. And that can be simple as putting the picture of a client and some feedback on that page that reinforces the decision for them to contact you. Something along the lines of, my business was a mess, contacted these guys, everything's better now. Yeah, being slightly facetious, but you know what I mean. You're wanting to reinforce the potential purchasing decision. That's one action that you can take immediately after coming off this call.
Perfect. So you may be finding that you don't get much engagement with your emails, and that's whether you're doing automated emails or whether you're doing a newsletter. And each of your emails within your email sequence, if it is automated or if it's your normal fortnightly or monthly newsletter that you send out, should start with a story and lead to a really clear goal. Now, email is a great chance to continue the relationship at a deeper level. I think I may have missed one, did I? Oh, no, yes, I did. It's a great chance to continue the relationship at a much deeper level than you can often on social media. And it can lead people to what you most want them to do, which is pick up the phone or hit reply or fill out this form or book a call with us. Now, in the example here, one of the senior consultants is also a chair on a disability support service organisation in Tasmania. And because the NDIS is particularly important to a lot of their clients, they can take what would, again, be rather dry content about changes in that space and turn it into a personal story that their client can relate to. So as a potential client, if I'm trying to find an accountant who's going to understand my situation in relation to dealing with the NDIS, Synectic becomes a no-brainer option for me. Of course, this then leads, if I click that, it leads to an article that's been written, which again is a form of storytelling for getting media exposure for your business. Another example, while in the real estate industry, but this is one of my clients who tapped into the emotional story of a client that many of her ideal clients are in the situation of they're selling their parents' home and they're transitioning their parents into aged care. Real estate, I guess a lot of real estate agents think about transactions. She thinks about what is the emotional toll that all of this takes on someone. And so she's painted this story around, I understand the emotion that you're going through. And a lot of the times she does a lot of in-person networking and speaks at events as well. And she tells her own story about how she had to transition her own family member into aged care and the emotional toll that took on her family, so she can tell her own personal experience. So people now understand that this is not just somebody, another real estate agent. It's someone who has genuine empathy for what they're going through. So if you can relate and tell stories that your ideal client actually, they get that you understand their situation, then that's just as important. And then the last piece that I want to share from the pipeline today is getting the first commitment and booking the call with you. And this is probably the most challenging one that we face when we need to ensure the stories on our website. This is from our services page, our about page, our testimonials page, any pages on your website, each tell a story that fills them with confidence. It overcomes objections that they have and it prompts them to take the next step with you. So if you want to wrap your website copywriting into a story, then it's going to read better. They imagine themselves again having that outcome of the service that you provide. And people walk away feeling like they got some value, even if they're not going to take action in that moment. The thing is that they'll come back because they remember you. You're top of mind for them. So here are some things to think about for your own website. I'm not sure if that's going to, no, it's gone too far again. Some things to think about for your own website to help with that critical getting the browser to turn into a lead or a client conversation or conversion step. Now, people want to know why you do what you do and what makes you different. And I did share before, or Anne shared about the why, Simon Sinek why. This is where we can be sharing that on our website, on our story page. And I do love this one from Chan and Naylor, who have a story page that shares a triggering moment that has shaped their firm. Plus, of course, you can see down the bottom of the page, that's actually still part of their page, in the sidebar is a little bit of a client story. So this all appears on the one page, which provides great positioning and social proof as well. Then the DFK one that I particularly like is showing who we are. And this is through the community involvement page. It's, I want to work with this business because they care, because what they do resonates with me. And I love the story of what the money is actually going towards this year and that personal story as well. So these two pages are as much about attracting the right people to you as it is about repelling the people that you don't want to work with as well. And then another example that I quite liked is this services page. Services pages can be quite challenging. Again, how do you differentiate yourself when you're all doing the same thing? This one, there is some improvement that could happen here, but in this example, it's a focus on tech and how that's going to help my business if I become a client. So it's less about who they are and why they're great, and more about why they feel that they can help me because they're telling a story about the tech world. And I can see what they're trying to get across, and there's positioning there as well. So as you can see, your entire system needs to tell a story and lead people. And one of my clients emailed me and said, I opened up your newsletter and the next thing I was on your sales page and I have no idea how I got there. And the key was that I told a story in my newsletter that led to a blog post where they read the blog post, and that blog post then led to a free resource where they put in their email address, and then that led to a sales page. And they did all of this without even realising that they were taking that journey. And she said, I don't know how I got here, and I need to go back and I need to retrace my steps now and figure out how I got there. So you need to be able to tell this story so that people get lost in the journey, that they go through this page after page, from social media to your website to your email to another page like this, like your services page, where they feel like they're going through it without being sold to it all and completely wrapped in that story. So the next part, gosh, this is not working particularly well today. Finding the right stories to inspire action. This is the third part and the last part of what I want to share in this training today, to give you something you can implement in your business. These are the, you already been taking notes probably about your ideal client and where they're hanging out, and how you can be enhancing your marketing and your sales pipeline in your own business. But I want to show you now some stories that you can be using, and if you're thinking of where do I start, these are the 3 places that I would be starting. So the quickest and easiest way for you to find the most persuasive stories to move people from being a bit of a fan or a follower of you to actually becoming a client or becoming a lead is to ask this question, which I know Andy's heard me say a million times, but what do you need to demonstrate to your most aligned clients to get them, to have them believe or to get them to say yes? So that might mean saying yes to clicking through to a blog post. It might be signing up for a free resource or to get on your email list, clicking the Connect With Us button on your services page, or even picking up the phone and booking an appointment with you. You're selling to get them to take these actions. So expand your thinking from purely telling stories to get the lead, but also how to tell stories that lead them to saying yes to other points in your marketing and your sales as well. Now, the 3 different storytelling types that I'd really love to see start using in your business, and that I think are the most critical ones to getting the lead. The first one is why, which we've already touched on quite a bit today. And the story of my husband was one of my why stories. Why I do what I do. It's a great way for you to build that emotional connection with your audience before they actually become a lead. And as I explained earlier, one of my clients is a real estate agent, and their biggest challenge is that every real estate agent says the exact same thing. I'm trustworthy, I'm reliable, and I'm honest. And guess what we all think about real estate agents? That you can't trust them, that you can't rely on what they're going to say to you, and you usually find out that they haven't been telling you the truth when they claim that X number of people have looked through your property. So by using these 3 keywords, she's just branding herself as one of them. And it happens in all sorts of different industries. We all have perceptions about people in certain industries. So to move her away from that and to highlight her empathy for many of her ideal clients who, as I said, are having to sell the family home to move their parents into aged care, we dug into some of the personal stories which align with her values and uncovered why she does what she does. We used the Find Your Why book and we did a personal one, and our next step is now to do it with her entire team to find out the team one. And these are the things, what we found from that book, are the things that she comes back to. It's not just her marketing anymore, but it's also every decision she has to make in any given day, she comes back to her core values and to her why. But her why statement now, there's a whole bunch of why action steps within it, but the overarching one is to deeply understand someone else's situation so that they can live a more joyful, fulfilled life. And we use that through her marketing in various forms. Tell the stories we uncovered when defining that why statement as well. So there were stories attached to how we actually eventuated with that why statement. So she has a case study video, which we're about to turn into a blog post, of someone who sold their mother's house to move into her into aged care, and how caring and empathetic Joanne was during that situation and during that process, which was highly emotional, of course, for all of them involved. I interviewed her in the top video to share how people refer to her now as a dear friend or one of the family. And she has some clients, she sold their house, 3 years ago, and they still contact her once a week, pop into the office to see how she is, because she's become friends with her as opposed to just a business one. So, of course, this one is again building that social proof in, and as Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, which is why these stories are so important. Your story doesn't, of course, have to change the world, but it does have to change the life of at least one person for it to matter. And you all make a huge difference to the lives of your clients.
So coming in, if I may, for a sec, Kellie, the thing to ask yourself here, guys, is that I think there's two parts to this. There is an umbrella why. So why are you in this particular business? Accounting and business advisors, there's their overall why, which is often, but you'll have your own ways of interpreting it and communicating it, it's to make life easier for business owners. It's the peace of mind. You're not selling, on-time tax returns. You're selling peace of mind. And things like that. If that can sound a little cliche, you have to dig a bit deeper, but it's finding that umbrella, then you are likely to also have a why for the different types of services that you do. Like the why behind audit is very different to the why behind business advisory. So this is where sitting down with yourself and your team and actually digging down into these whys can then help you choose the clients whose stories you may tell, because they demonstrate and illustrate your why in action. And when we are interviewing clients, there is a great deal of leading questions that are asked in a way to elicit responses that reinforce those values that you're looking to illustrate and demonstrate. So think of it with your umbrella why and your service line whys, and that may help you identify this a little bit more clearly. But as you can hear clearly from Kellie, we want to move away from using the same why that every other type of firms use. And those points are different a difference for yourself.
Perfect. No, very good. Something to think about, and I guess to use as a bit of a prompt for you, is ask yourself what's happened in your life that's changed the way you think about the world and your role in it. And think of something that relates to why you do what you do in business. So sometimes something that's happened earlier in our life or a triggering event can actually be the reason that we're doing what we're doing today and why it's so important to us. And in Joanne's case, it was the reason that she's so passionate about people and the aged care side of things is because she's lived through it, because she understands how horribly emotional that is, and having to deal with a real estate agent who just did not care and had no empathy for their situation. And so it's why she's so passionate about that. So finding that for yourself can really help as well. Now, the next type of storytelling is endorsement, and this is particularly important because it's where we can allow people to see how we can help them based on what we've done for clients. Now, case studies via blog posts can help us show why someone sought us out in the first place, what the process was like when they were working with us, and then what the outcome was. Now, a shorter version of this would, of course, be your testimonials page, or maybe you've got testimonials on your services page that you help, again, provide that social proof for anyone who's unsure of whether or not to click that button to book a time with you or to dial that phone number. But the key is to make this, successful is not to tell your most successful client stories. The key is to rather tell a story that your ideal client can relate to, one where they can see themselves in the actual story. Now, if I'm a 20-something-year-old, I'm not, but let's pretend I am, because that would be great. I'm probably not going to resonate with these three stories on the screen here, because I'm not in their age demographic, and they're not telling stories that interest me. So you're actually repelling me, but maybe that's the whole goal of telling the stories on this particular screen. So anything to consider, another thing, to consider, especially with social media, is that if someone else tells your stories, be sure to share that as well. So we have the stories that we get the client, and they can tell our story for us, and we can share that for that social proof, for that endorsement, and for us to identify that this is my accounting firm, because they're working with clients just like me, so they get me. The other thing is, if somebody else tells our story, this is an example of Synectic, who have retweeted or shared a tweet from their Xero partner, Jeremy, that provides social proof, credibility and influence. Now, considering one of their main ideal clients are farmers, then this one strikes a chord with, if I was a farmer, strikes a chord with me right away. It differentiates them from all the other Tasmanian accountants, and it creates that positioning as well, because they have Xero sharing their story for them. So if somebody shares your story, make sure that you let people know that someone is sharing your story, because it's great positioning and social proof.
So there's a little asterisk here, guys. With your social media, think LinkedIn, and think, to an extent, some of you are on Facebook as well. This is where following is really important, and liking other businesses' pages and connecting on their profiles on LinkedIn, or following their businesses, so that whether they are a client of yours or an aspirational, like I'd like to work with these guys, commenting and sharing posts that hopefully reinforce our values, but also are just increasing the connection with those clients and potential clients. That's one of the things I've often talked about. Spend 10 minutes a day on LinkedIn, and that's a great example. Not just sharing your stuff, but sharing and re-sharing things that reinforce the positioning that you want to have as well via your clients. So think about who you might be following, and to make some more of those connections. You can actually on LinkedIn follow a person or a company without actually asking for a connection, if you don't want to be quite that transparent. So that is an option for you.
Very good. And then the last one, the last storytelling type that I think is most important, is overcoming objection. Now, your ideal client has a ton of reasons why they don't want to work with you. And you need to ensure that your website in particular, but also your marketing as a whole, is overcoming all the objections they have to working with you. And you need to think about it in three different ways. There's three, I think, grouped type of objections that we all have. And you need to think as well about your own habits. If you're about to invest in something, what makes you hover over the buy button, or what makes you hover over the phone and I'm not sure whether I want to dial that number? They're the things that hold us back from taking action. And we need to tell the right stories at the right time to ensure that when they start thinking that way, they've already had a story that's knocked over that objection, so that they can keep moving forward with you. So the first one is industry beliefs. Now, their belief is that accountants and financial advisors rip people off. That's their industry belief. And when we talked about real estate agents, it was, they never say what they're going to do. They never do what they're going to say. So this was actually a real one for a financial advisor client I had, in light of the media attention around negative news on financial advisors attached to banks. So one of the stories we shared was around this. I couldn't find the exact example, so I've just taken the copy that I had. But are you scared of financial advisors not working in your best interest? It's a real fear in light of recent media. And it's why it was important for us to be completely transparent and accountable, and to choose a licensee who shared that same value. And so she goes on to say that instead of being audited every year, and having 2 months to prepare for it, they could be audited at any moment. In fact, they could be doing it right now. So they put themselves and overcome one of the big objections that she knew her ideal client has, which is that right now there was a lot of media attention around financial advisors, and everyone was being put, tarred with the same brush pretty much. So she needed to differentiate and for people to understand how they do things differently. The other objection that people will have is internal beliefs. So, these are the stories that we tell ourselves in our head. They're not real, but this is what they say. So accountants don't know our personal situations, so they're not going to be too sensitive to our situation. So KMT partners are telling the story here on the left from the client's point of view. Lines like, when your family owns a business, there is far more to consider than business objectives. And it speaks exactly to the fear that they have around you not taking a holistic approach to their succession planning. This isn't just about numbers, that this is also about everything else that's going on, the relationships, the emotions, all that sort of stuff that goes on when you're dealing with a family business. So that's really important in this situation where someone is trying to decide who they want to work with. They want, again, somebody who cares and shares their values. Now, the one on the other side of the screen is the fear they have around not taking, being too embarrassed at how disorganised their business finances are, which I'm sure is a lot of clients who first come to you. They're too scared to show you exactly what's going on in their business because you're going to ask them a question and they don't know how to answer it because they actually don't know the answer to the question. And so they feel a little bit dumb and they don't understand the jargon and all that sort of stuff. So if you can ease some of that fear and say, hey, that's what we're here for, we're going to help you with that, then that takes away all that fear and anxiety that they're going to have that, oh my goodness, they're going to think I've got no idea about business because I haven't got my finances in order.
I love that one on the right. And I bet you could all think about like some fears or what I call a misbelief as to why someone wouldn't pick up our services. And one of them that I know sits in the back of lots of people's heads is the buying cycle for someone to change professional services advisors can be really long because they're so woven into the fabric of the business. So what stories could you tell that illustrate changing from MYOB to zero is not so scary? Or moving from, the local accountant to stepping up into the service level that we offer as a tier 2 firm is not quite so scary. And we've seen it all before. We've done the handover, we've done the changes, we've unraveled, etc. Think of some stories that you could tell around that, because I think that's one of the biggest blockers to it's too hard to change. Unless they really screw it up, we're going to stay with the status quo. That's a big objection for us to be able to overcome.
Perfect. That's great. The last belief, so we've had industry beliefs, we've had their internal stories that they tell themselves. The external beliefs, I couldn't actually find an example for, unfortunately, but it's like using the economy is bad right now, so it's not a good time to be moving all my finances to a new accounting firm. They're the excuses caused by things that they feel are out of their control. The economy is always the one people resort to because it's easy, and something's always happening in the economy that they can use as an excuse. So that's always a good one. But thinking about if there's anything external, and I'm not sure if something comes to mind for you now, but I couldn't find anything specific other than...
Well, I guess one that could come up, Kelly, and we've had discussions about this, is disruption. We've put it in the wavelength survey as well, is whether or not the industry is concerned about disruption, about things that are changing and undermining them and ripping the carpet out from under their feet, and the desire not to change other things because too much is already changing. Mm-hmm. So disruption of your industry may be an area where we can tell stories about how we can help anticipate it, help them get through it, etc., etc. That's one that comes to mind. So this idea of these 3 different sorts of beliefs, this is another example of good things to brainstorm on, and then to work out, okay, how does that affect our firm? How does that affect our client? What might be their industry, internal, external beliefs? And come up with ones beyond the economy and disruption, which is the 2 that we're proffering today.
Fantastic. And as you can see, that you don't need to be Shakespeare to tell any of these stories, to influence, to inspire, and to persuade people to take action with you through storytelling, or to differentiate you as well. Sometimes the most powerful stories that we can tell are actually the simplest and the ones that prompt people to pick up the phone, because it hits them where it matters, which is in the heart, creating that emotional connection with them. So you just need to know how to tell the right story at the right time to attract the right people to you. And how do you know where to add more stories? Then you need to ask then where are people dropping off in your marketing pipeline, which we've already looked at today, and where do you need to provide more persuasion or belief? So storytelling, of course, creates that belief, and that's how we can arrive at how we can find out what the stories are that we need to be sharing. So obviously, if you still feel a bit daunted by this, I am here to help, as Ange said at the beginning of this, whether it's finding your stories or your why, or knowing where to use them to ensure that they have the most impact as well. So I'm open to any questions that you might have. Oh, I can't hear you, Ange. I'll just unmute you.
Sorry, I was just saying, if you want to stop the screen sharing?
Yes.
So we can see everybody.
Lovely. I'll just figure out where the buttons go. And stop sharing.
Okay, so the storytelling is not a quick tactic that you can just go and toss out there and there you go, I've told a story and it's all over. I mean, obviously there's a lot of detail here, which is number one, while we're recording the session for you to listen in again. Number two, whilst it is that we're sending out the slides, so that you can look at in particular that map and work out where is your weak point at the moment. Is it that, because you consider storytelling as a lead generation pipeline. That's the way I like to look at it. You know, referrals are one, networking is another, cross-selling is another, and storytelling could be another. Advertising on social media could be another. So you've got to have at least 4 or 5 lead generation pipelines to keep your business healthy. So if one shuts down for whatever reason, your business doesn't grind to a halt. So storytelling is an art form, but it is something that can be learned. It's a learned skill. It's something that becomes better when you use it more often. So if you were thinking of questions right now, it might be, how do we find those values? You know, what stories have you found most effective? Where should we start? So this is an excellent opportunity. No question is silly, because if you're thinking it, I guarantee somebody else on the call is as well. So I guess one thing that I would start with is, do you have an idea of a story that you might pursue at the moment that you could ask for an opinion on, or how to approach it? Now I shall be quiet and wait. There's lots of thoughtful expressions. And chin grabbing, I'm seeing that too. Especially up in Queensland. Okay. Nope. Sometimes you hit this at the end of a webinar, unless, Melissa, that was from Gooding Partners.
Yeah. Yes. I do have one question. One thing that I have trouble with in our firm is getting, just extracting this information about how the accountants and all the technical team actually help our clients. And there's a lot of hesitation in actually going to the clients and asking them for feedback, and asking them, what value they see that we deliver. Because I just keep getting a very, basically a numbers response from them.
Yeah.
And there's not much emotion in them, and they just sort of look at me with a blank face. And because I get it, and I know what kind of questions I should be asking, but there's definitely hesitation to firstly ask them, and also they are concerned that they think some of our clients might not be happy to share that sort of information because it might give away some private information, or they just don't like to publicize the fact that they would be connected to our accounting firm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that information is sometimes quite
difficult.
Yeah.
I think if the fear is around asking in the first place, which some people do have that issue of, I don't want to ask my client because you don't want that hassle maybe, or you're scared of what the answer might be, or I just don't have time. It gets put on the I'll get to it one day list. I think you can also be creating an automated email, a template that goes out that everybody sends out after an X amount of time, where it can go out and ask the client specific questions. And then those questions can be around what was the reason that you came to us in the first place. And they don't have to share, well, we were in debt, X amount of dollars and all that sort of personal information that none of us want to share anything like that with other people. But they can say we're in a space where we needed to, improve by X amount, if they still want to go with numbers. But the real thing that people care most about is, what was the process like working with you? What was the relationship like? Did they care about you? And asking questions around that as well. So that templated email might actually ask, how did you find working with us? What was the experience like? And finding out that information. And then the last part, so one, we want to know why they came to us, what was the problem in the first place. The second question is, what was the experience like working with us through that process? And then the final one is, what's the outcome? And some people's outcome might be that I have peace of mind finally, and we're back on track, and I feel good about our business and finances, as opposed to we got out of debt and now we've made $2.5 million turnover or whatever. I don't want to share that stuff, but I might want to take we're in a good place. Now, does that make sense?
No, it does, and that's the sort of response and feedback that I've given them, and I've even done a template. It's just getting them to actually send it and be comfortable to send it.
Yeah, sure. Is it something that you could be sending? Is it something you can send on their behalf if they're not going to?
Yeah, and I think I could with their permission. It's just because I'm only part-time, I don't really have any interaction with the clients. They don't know who I am, and I just think that probably seems a bit odd, asking them some more personalized questions about the relationship with the firm. So that's why I thought it would be better coming from the main advisor that they deal with.
And I think
I'll just pop in here for a moment if I can. I think one of the things, the question you're asking is really good, and i.e. everyone's feeling the same thing. One of the angles that I'd like to suggest, and the automation can certainly help you find opportunities, the automated email that Kellie's talking about. And I think another angle that you can come in from is that one of the things we all value is long-term relationships. Like, if you get clients involved and they're using 2 or 3 services, they tend to hang around a lot longer. So I would be digging down into just an example from each person of a positive long-term relationship. Because if you've got a client that's been with you for 3, 4, 5 years, or whatever the case may be, the pipeline of communication is more open than someone that's new. And they're much more likely to talk about the friendship and the relationship and the support that they get, which is exactly what it is we wanted to demonstrate. What it's like to be with us, as opposed to just getting service from anywhere. So I'd actually go in from the angle of having a conversation, you as the leader of this at your firm, for example, having a conversation about the type of things we're looking to bring out of a long-term relationship, having them identify someone that they really like and someone that they feel really quite connected and close to, and then getting these sort of stories is actually a lot easier. Take them out for a beer. Like, as you were speaking, I was thinking that's probably one of the better ways, is perhaps I go along with their advisor and sort of have like more of an informal catch up about the relationship. I reckon, because this is what it's all about. If you think about it, if one of our core values is to have long-term relationships with clients rather than short-term transactions with customers, then that type of conversation will happen much more in an informal, relaxed way, rather than like that. Bye, everyone, you're welcome. And approach it in that sort of a way. Because we're not looking that you have to find, 50 awesome stories. You have to find half a dozen as a starting point, and then you can take snippets and start sharing more of that behind the scenes insider information, as some of the examples we saw on the slides. So hopefully that's useful, and that might help for everybody else as well.
Yes. Thank you, Kellie. Thank you, Ange.
You're
No
most
worries.
welcome. Hey guys, anybody? I know we've gone for an hour and 15, so I really appreciate your time. But the step from here is really to now work out how are you going to use this information. We'll get the slides to you, we'll get the recording to you, but listening, hearing, and thinking it's a good idea is fantastic. But now you need to put it into action. Yeah. So what are the next steps? I would really suggest, as I said, getting the get someone who's going to be the story champion within your organization, who's going to take the responsibility for beginning to educate everyone else about how storytelling can work. You need to get the buy-in to actually bring it to life. Obviously, Kellie is very available, and we'll send out details of how to contact Kellie and perhaps to embed storytelling within your organization. And we'll be in touch anyhow to nick a story from you so that we can use it on the anz.com site. But find your why to start with stories. Any questions that come up after the webinar, just email them to us, and we will follow up for sure. So thank you, Kellie, and thank you everyone who invested with us today.
Not a worry. Thanks for having me.
Okay, enjoy your day, everybody. Talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.